So today I'm working on my TS760. This is a chop saw that I picked up a little while back and that I've been using to cut metal with. One of the things with this saw though is when I bought it, the nose guard for the belt here is broken. And so a lot of times when I'm using it, it falls off, which exposes the belt. So I went ahead and picked up a new nose guard for it, and I figure while I'm taking apart the saw to change out the nose guard, the guard for the wheel has seen some better days. At the very edge of the wheel guard here, there's some cracks, and just with the general paint, dents and dings, I picked up a new guard for it, which I have right here. But one of the things that I didn't realize is the new guard is different, an updated version of the old guard. So I'm going to have to swap a bunch of parts over, and unfortunately most of the parts do not swap. So I'm going to take and set aside the saw for now. So I got this guard, which is again the updated version of the guard, and so I'm going to swap the assembly from this guard to this guard, as this one will allow me to run a 16-inch wheel, whereas this one only allows me to run a 14-inch wheel. So one of the nice things about the 760 is it uses the same parts as the 460. The guards are the same, so this is a guard off of a 460, but I'm going to be able to use the parts on my 760. So let me get to swapping this over. So step number one is to start on this side and remove the bolt here as if you were going to change the wheel out for a new wheel, and then just pull the clamp part off. So then you're left with the inner clamp and the shaft that it rides on, and holding that in place there is a it's hard to see, there's a lock ring, a snap ring that holds it in place. So hopefully you guys can see that on the film. But what I'm going to want to do is take a pair of snap ring pliers and just remove that snap ring. Set it off to the side and take off this inner clamp for the wheel. And that's all that I'm going to do on this side. So now when I turn it over, I've got the pulley assembly that the belt rides on, and then the arm with the clutch. So I want to remove this nut. I actually went ahead and loosened it prior to this. It takes a 17mm socket, and the one thing that you want to be aware of is its left-hand thread. So if you're not careful, you can strip out this nut pretty easily, as I almost did because I didn't realize it was left-hand thread. The guy at my local hardware store was able to correct me on that. So then this pulley comes off, and you've got this little piece inside, and then you also have a keyway, and the keyway is right here on this shaft. You want to make sure you pull that out and don't lose it. So now that you have the pulley taken off, you have access to these 4 bolts here. So these just use your standard scrunch Torx or Starbit. So I'm going to go ahead and take those out. So that thud was this white piece on the back. And then this spacer. So now I can go ahead and pull this piece out and push this piece down. And so these 2 pieces will form together when I put it back together on the new one. So if your wheel does not spin, this would be a good time to change out the bearings. And I just had a spacer fall off the shaft. But this would be a good time to check your bearings and change them out if need be. If you need to do that, there is a snap ring inside here. You would remove that snap ring and you'd be able to replace the bearing. So the last thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to take out these screws that are just in the guard, because I'm going to put them in the new one. And I'm going to take off this one that holds on the handle. So then I'm going to flip it over, make sure that I'm not missing anything. And I'm going to set this one off to the side. This is still a good guard in case anything ever happens to the 16-inch. I'm going to keep this one because I can always put it back on if need be. But now I'm going to take the 16-inch guard and I'm going to put everything back together opposite the way I took it apart. So I'm going to put that back in place. And actually, these rubber indentations fit into the grooves here. So then I'm going to put the top part on here. And then take a look. Make sure everything seems to line up, which it does. And then I'm gonna put this on down below. Get it lined up and put the screws back in. So I kind of want to tighten them all down to about the same. I don't know if there's supposed to be an adjustment on those screws or not, but or tension with the springs. But now I've got that bolted back up. And it actually looks like I should go down a little bit more. So that way the threads catch a little bit better. But that's too much because that spring is completely compressed. Okay, so now those screws are down. I'm gonna call them good. I'll check at my local dealership, make sure that there's nothing that I'm missing, like the spacer, which fell out here. So I'm gonna put this spacer back on, and then I'm gonna line up this keyway and put this little key back in. Once I have that key back in, I can slide this on. It only goes on one way because of the key. And it should just slide on real nice and easy. Put the pulley back on. And then tighten down my nut. So now that's nice and tight on there. I'm going to flip this back over. Make sure everything seems nice and tight. Put this inner plate on. There's another little key kind of cut out of this one. So I've got to match that up here with the key on the thing, on the shaft. I'm going to take my snap ring, put it back on with the pliers, and I just had a screwdriver with which to press it down all the way. And so now you've heard that little kind of snap. So that snap rings back in place. One thing that I had just taken off before is this ring, which I'm not entirely sure what it does, but I'm going to put it back on. And I'm going to need to tap it with a persuader. You don't want to tap too much because you can ruin the bearing. And let me see. So that socket's not big enough. I'm going to have to grab just a slightly bigger socket. Okay, so I put something underneath it to stabilize it a little bit. I'm going to set this ring back down on top. Take my socket and line it up. And just tap it on. So I end up using a 21mm there. But now this is ready to go back on to the saw. With the new wheel, you just put the new wheel on and clamp it down. So I'm going to leave it here because I'm going to put a wheel on this. So I'm just going to set this off to the side for a second. Grab my saw. And we'll zoom out. Okay, so now that you can see the saw again, to remove this guard, I'm going to remove the 3 bolts here. I'm also going to take off this armature, which has the 2 bolts here, as well as 2 Allen head bolts here. So these 2, I'm going to start with these 2. These 2 take a 5mm bolt or head, Allen head. And so next I'm going to remove these bolts here. These ones are just loosely put on. I can figure out what size wrench they take though, because I'm going to need it. So now that I've got those 3 bolts out, I can take the guard off of the belt, and now I can discard this because I'm not going to be using this one anymore. But in order to put the new one on, I'm going to want to remove these nuts here. As this will allow me to put the new wheel onto the belt, and then from there put this cover back on. So I can now take the cover off. The saw drops down a little bit. But now I can grab my new guard. Slip it on the belt and put this back on. Making sure that when I do, it gets routed into, I guess I'll take this back off, that it gets routed into the grooves on either side and that the belt goes here. I guess I didn't show that too well. So when I put the belt back on, I want to make sure that the top of the belt is in this upper groove and the bottom of the belt is in this lower space, so that way the belt doesn't get pinched or damaged. And so I'm going to put these 2 nuts back on the studs. Just to hold this cover in place. And then I'm going to focus my attention up here where this guard is. So first things first, I want to make sure that I'm putting this onto the saw. And then while looking behind, I'm able to line up the bolt and forget to put a piece on it. I don't know what this does except space it out a little bit. But it was on there initially, so I'm going to put it back on. I have a feeling this is something for the water, which this saw does not have on it. So now that I got one bolt started, this guard stays on and in place. I can now start the second bolt. And I want to wait to tighten everything down. And first I want to grab the proper wrench for this. And it looks like it's a 19. So I'm going to put this last stud in. So those are all nice and tight. I'm going to put my Allen heads back in and get everything nice and started before I start tightening stuff down. Sometimes you'll find out that if you tighten stuff down, you can't get bolts started. So I'm going to take and tighten them. So the last one that I want to tighten is this one. Which on this saw is a 14 millimeter or 9/16 more likely. So I want to make sure that I put this handle back on to the top up here. And I'll turn it around a little bit. Take my Torx bit, tighten them down. And I'll take and put this last one in just so that way I got it. So now I've got the new guard on the saw. I'm going to go ahead and do the last step, which is to put the wheel on. So what I want to do is I want to fit this bar into the hole in the cover and turn it until I find a hole. Can I find a hole? Let me grab a flashlight. So actually, the hole does not line up with this new cover. So I'm going to have to ask at the store why that is, or I'm going to have to potentially drill that with to make a hole of my own. But I'm still going to put a wheel on it for now. Okay. So when I put this wheel on, I want to make sure that this is all nice and put in. I want to take my little cover here, pop it on into place. And then tighten this bolt down, which I believe is a 19mm. So just give it a little tighten up for now. I'm gonna have to see my dealership about getting the right cover. And then, yeah, now I've got a 16-inch wheel on my TS760. One thing that I'm noticing is the wheel hits the ground, so I gotta see if there's an adjustment for these shoes, so that way I can pop those, so that way when I have it and running and warming up, the wheel's not touching the ground. But when it comes to go and cut truck frames and leaf springs and whatever else, I'm gonna want this 16-inch wheel to get through the metal and have the depth. So thank you for watching. We'll see you next time when I get started on my next project. So have a good one.